as you said, can we fast forward this song? I thought, well, what if this is happening because of the previous relationship? And that opened up a whole world of like, you know, the history of a woman with a Wagnerian mother, and it just fueled it and got us through it quicker.
Well, and it kind of carries through to...
Got us through to one of her songs quicker.
But to why can't a woman, you know, be more like a man? Now you take the history of what's been going on between the two of you into that.
And because he's a science guy and he's obsessed with it, and in theorizing, he genuinely wants to know the answer. He's not being he's not being hypothetical or witty. He thinks there's a good scientific point to this.
Yeah, that there's a desperation there too, and trying to find the answer.
That's what Bar helped me with, having never sung songs professionally before. He was like, you've got to keep it active. So right to the end of I've grown accustomed, if I make it sentimental, it becomes sentimental. Whereas if the fight continues to try and comprehend his own feelings and her feelings and what all of this bubbling whirlpool that has come up inside of what it is, if I can keep it active, then that's, I think, more effective than going, isn't this a lovely song? Because that was another thing Bart gave me, was an idea for the character, that maybe he's someone who, if he was around today, we would say could be classed as having autistic spectrum disorder, i.e. he doesn't understand other people's emotions, his own emotions. He's very focused on one thing, and that's his fight, and that's his journey to self-discovery and understanding who he is. That's a long sentence.
We're here for long sentences.
There's a very the interesting scene well, they're all wonderful, but I mean the most difficult scene for me, for Pickering, is when he sings "You Did," and because actually he's always championed Eliza up until that moment, and that's the moment that he joins Higgins in ignoring her.
I was going to ask you about that, actually.
I always found it so
was I.
And the only reason, the only answer that we sort of came up with is because basically Higgins and Pickering, particularly because of so much of their time and of their class, even the one thing that they share is this love of language, and they're big sort of overgrown schoolboys. And so they've made this bet, and even though actually Pickering has lost the bet because he says, I bet you can't do it, he's thrilled when she turns into this wonderful, beautiful creature.
Because it's the unexpected for him.
Yes, totally unexpected. And yet, they get so carried away. The only way I can make sense of that song is that he gets so carried away with Higgins in the joy of the bet that actually for a second even Pickering ignores Eliza. And that costs him because he's the one that then makes the phone call to his friend at the Home Office to see if they can find her. But it's a very difficult moment because you just think, this doesn't really square with anything that this character has said or done up until this point. And that's his only song.
But it's critical that happens for
totally.
both of us. Her mistreatment is unconscious.
It's totally unconscious. So he's not, neither of them are trying to punish her. They're just so swept away by their own kind of schoolboy-like joy at having achieved this.
But I think that's so clear. I've never had anyone come to the show and say those guys were so horrible. It's very clear that it's unconscious.
Well, it's also interesting that you brought up earlier that Eliza says she learned how ladies and gentlemen treat each other from Pickering.
I mean, part of that is for his benefit. Because
of course.
Yeah, so there's definitely a bit of her sticking it to him.
But it is really interesting in this production that I think the message comes so much farther forward of, well, is that true? The ambivalence of that because of his argument that I just treat everyone the same, even if it's nasty and even if you don't like it.
Right.
I'm actually the one who's the most honest. Right. Danny, I want to talk to you about two brilliant numbers, Little Bit of Luck and Get Me to the Church on Time. since we're talking about the songs of the show, I mean, let's talk about Chris Catelli's choreography in Get Me to the Church and tackling that. Do you, replacing and coming into something that's just established, right? You're not creating the movement. Do you still have flexibility to bring what Danny would do as Doolittle into it?
Yes, I did actually, and that was a great part of joining the company. They said, if you don't feel comfortable with anything in the choreography, for example, Norbert would do a half split. Bernstein's not doing it. His old knees, no. Yeah, it was 35 years of jumping around on stage as an actor professionally. And, at a certain point, you literally go,
Body just says,
8 times a week? No, I can do it, but not 8 times a week, I can do it once. Yeah.
Will you be at that
Sunday
one
night.
No, the last show. Of course not. But they did give me great flexibility, and it is maybe the hardest number I've ever done. And the first time I did it was the put-in. I still didn't have all the costumes and all that. So the first time I did it with the orchestra, with the lights, with everybody on stage, and the right costumes and shoes, was the first performance. And there are 30 people swarming around you, and I did a lot of praying, I wouldn't fall off the stage because I didn't know that you really can't see where the edge of the stage is for the first time. Yeah, and I learned that, on my first performance, like, oh, I want to walk there, but I don't know if there is a there.
Yeah, but that's the thing about Broadway and theater in general. As it keeps going, that's expected and asked of all of you performers, that you just go in and you figure it out. And I think that that's one of the most incredible things about our art form, is that you guys all rise to the challenge because that's just how it goes.
People watching. Yeah. But we walked the whole theatre, whilst he was doing this song for the first time. Everyone backstage was glued to a monitor, just willing you on. It was
Wondering whether I would fall off.
placing bets.
I also want to give a big shout out to Chris Catelli, as you said at the beginning, who is just an angel, a brilliant, genius guy. I love him.
So when that number, when it was rehearsed, we didn't see it. I think we were in the rehearsal room doing Ordinary Man for 4 days or something, just going crazy. And the rest of the world, all our ensemble were in a different room rehearsing that. And eventually, on a lunch break or something, he said, "Can we just show you what we've been working on?" And we said, "Yeah, sure." And they did it, and Lauren Ambrose and I looked at them. Oh my God, this is a musical. And it was incredible. And then Bart said, "Okay, less of the acrobatics, but it's good."
You say that it's the most challenging number you've done. What, aside from the choreography, or is it the choreography that makes it such a feat?
Yes. It's everything. It's everything. It's singing it. It's telling the story. It is having enough breath to sing, to get through it, and then the dancing that goes on after that. And then it just continues on.
I feel like it's the number where we get a little bit of your Adolfo comedian coming out. Like that's that over the top.
Yeah, well, he's drunk in every scene. He's drunk. So, I did a lot of work to prepare for that.
Well, you have that incredible entrance before a little bit of luck where you just quite literally, you just flats and fall right back down. Almost, I feel like you're going to somersault over yourself. Talk to me about a little bit of luck and the two gentlemen who share the stage with you, who are so wonderful to make that lovely, simple trio that's in such contrast to Get Me to the Church.
Yeah, Joe and Lance, they're amazing actors, and they're also people you walk on stage, and they've been doing it so long that they're so established, and they know exactly what they're doing that you feel like, oh gosh, I've got to rise to that level. I've got to have that authenticity that they bring just naturally because they've been doing it so long. I have to have that as well when I walk on stage, and they have helped me tremendously. And then going into the number, it is truly anything goes every single night so far. I do something and then they start aping me, and then we just have a blast. We are really having the most wonderful time. I also want to mention, Laura and I have a couple of moments that I never knew were in there until we started playing them, that are so beautiful.
Yeah.
I
Like what?
had no idea they were there. And I'd also like to say one more thing.
Yeah.
Sitting on this panel has been fascinating to me because I'm learning so much.
Me too. Like, tell me more about rehearsal. What's rehearsal? Yeah.
Can you give an example of one of those moments that you didn't realize?
You know what? I'll be honest with you. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to spoil it.
Agreed.
Because it's so, things are
Tender.
happening, and they will change every single night, because that's the best part of doing live theater.
Yes.
You bring who you are and what you are to that stage at any particular time, and it's a beautiful transition and evolution that happens.
And that's what, if I may, that's what was wonderful for Alan. I'm talking on your behalf as well. When new people join, you talk about having to raise the bar. Alan and I, it feels like we have to raise the bar to meet you, and it's a combination of that and hearing it from a different voice. We really feel like we're hearing it for the first time.
It's great. It keeps
After
you fresh.
months.
You have to concentrate, which means that you have to plug right back into the original intentions, and that's thrilling, actually. It's really thrilling.
It means you're all really listening, so it's really alive at the moment.
I want to talk about the dialects in this show.
Oh, God.
Right?
They're still using theirs.
I come out of it, it's bad.
No. I had to work for a long time to really get an English accent. Really, it took me out of my native habitat.
Laura, you're doing something different that I haven't really seen in other versions where, she's so full Cockney in that opening scene and in the beginning, but then at the Ask It, that it's a little shakier purposefully, that no, she's not perfect.
She's not there yet.
Yeah.
She's not there yet. They brought her too soon, for sure. Yeah, and
I have a gag with my mother. Don't you think she's ready for it? Like straight afterwards.
yeah, she's like, no, she's ready for a barge?
Canal bar.
A canal barge, so.
But then I do say, I throw every word in there and it comes out perfectly.
Right.
So it's mixed messages.
Sure. But, in the brief time that I had with Bart, that's something he and I talked about. I had wanted actually, I could have danced all night to maintain some of the Cockney. Just because the idea, the musical theater magic of it, that all of a sudden now she has a spot-on English accent, felt a little false to me, and it always had since I was a child. I tried it for the first few performances, and it just wasn't clear enough because I'm singing.
Right.
And there are just certain vowels that it wasn't clear. I was working hard at something the audience was I tried to bring a bit of what I was trying to do there into Ask It, where she's, she is absolutely trying her best, and she's just not there yet. Because, the thing Bart and I had talked about is if she's there in Ask It, then what happens at the ball? There's nowhere to go. She's already spot on. So that for me is like one of my favorite scenes.
And I feel like the in-between accent might be the hardest of it all because it is straddling a line. Like, what is it in your brain that you're bringing from the Cockney and bringing from?
Well, for me, the thing that Liz Smith, the dialect coach, and I had spoken about is that, just as for me still with the Cockney, I'm still trying to navigate every word. And she is trying to navigate every word of a posh English accent from her Cockney. So it's really about every single word is spoken. It's less of, I'm speaking a full sentence and it's tripping off my tongue.
The rhythm of it.
Exactly, it's more rhythm than anything, where it's like, I am getting this word that I am saying. And it's really, you know, it's really challenging because the story that I have to tell is so long, and there's so much comedy in between the lines, that how do I get to the end of the phrase so that the entire story makes sense while satisfying the audience in terms of them wanting to laugh, which at that moment in the play they really do. So yeah.
And we've earned it because
Yes.
we've gone at a pace for like an hour, and that's the key, is you go rattle through the first hour, then
They
you
can
get
get
this
a
amazing
reward.
scene where
Yeah.
you can just take your time and, yeah.
And you can feel their relief almost.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, you're like really ready. You're like, I didn't have to do anything.
Which begins even a bit earlier in the rain and spade, I think. That's the first
Yes.
time the audience really kind of go,
Absolutely.
ah.
Yes.
Danny, I hear you're a student of dialect as well, and that you brought that history to being able to find Alfred's talkie, that you felt like you were prepared for that.
Well, in 1989, I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to study at the Moscow Art Theater. We were the first group of American students to go study in Moscow. And on our way there, I stayed in London for a little while, and I walked around with my tape recorder, and I asked people to just tell me where they were from and tell me a little bit about themselves. And believe it or not, people were happy to oblige. And one guy, a Cockney man named George, he said, "Hello, my name is George, and I'm from the Bowes region in London." You know, and I thought, fantastic. And I've been waiting all these years to do that. And in the first scene, I do ask, I talk to a fellow named George. And so I said, the reason I say when I do it, I say, George, like that, is because of that guy that I met
I love that.
in 1980.
Wish we could find George and let him know.
He was great, he worked in the airport, he was a lovely guy.
Laura, your Eliza, when she first comes out, she's a bit tougher and a bit funnier she is funny.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, this is a funny situation, or what Higgins is saying about her is funny. And you've played so many roles in the past where, I mean, I will always live for your Women on the Verge. That comedy. Yes, you did. With Bart.
You were incredible in that.
I know. Is that something that you knew you wanted Eliza to have a little bit of that, not just fortitude, but a comedy in her fortitude? Does that just come
I'm not
because it's
20.
you?
I'm not 20 years old, and the part was written for a person who's 20 years old. So for me, the things that have gotten me through the thing that has gotten me through the most difficult moments in my life has been my sense of humor, and my ability to sort of step outside of myself and be like, this is hell, but this is funny, you know. And one day I will look back on this and laugh really hard. And I don't know how a person would live on the street, sell flowers. She's probably been on the street since she was 10 years old, you know, working as a scullery maid, working as a whatever, you know, standing up in a boarding house, not even sleeping, wearing all of her clothes. How does one get through that without a sense of humor and become the person she ultimately becomes? So for me, it's not that I'm trying to make jokes so that the audience laughs. For me, it is truly a part of her character and who she is, that she can see the world through the lens of a sense of humor. And with that comes familiarity with the people, the maids who work in Higgins' house, the way that she and Pickering are with each other, which is, I think, a very warm and loving relationship. And ultimately, for me, what she wants from Higgins, you know, yes, she wants to better herself for sure, but for me, my version of her is a person who ultimately, she says it in her first song, you know, I think she's a simple person who happens to be kind of a genius and is able to pick up this language relatively quickly and really pull something really magical off with the help of these two brilliant gentlemen. But I do think she also wants love. you know? And so that is the place that I come from, that she is wanting love, not necessarily romantic love, but to be seen. To be seen, to be valued, to be treated with kindness, to be treated with respect, which is really universal. It's what we all want, right? And so for me, the way that I approach that is through her sense of humor. And Bart, actually, it's interesting because I'm not sure when you saw the show, but initially when I began, I wasn't playing her as tough. And when Bart came to see the show, he was like, you need to be way more wild. He's like, I want you to be kind of scary. You know, you have to.
Well, because what he reminds us all is that she goes to, they don't make the deal in Covent Garden.
No.
She goes to his house and says,
Yes, it is her agency.
right,
Yeah.
you said you could do this, I want to do this.
Yes.
You bring up though that she wants love, and we don't have our Freddie Einsberg Hill on stage today, but I think that that's what that character really introduces to the story, and what, when Jordan Donica originated the role, and now Christian Dante White is playing this, really brings such a beautiful gentility to it,
Yeah.
as opposed to so often we can think of Freddie as naive or frivolous, and instead it's a purity.
Yeah, I mean, when I get to say to him, you don't think I'm a heartless gutter snipe, do you? You know, like, when a person that you really care for has said something really horrible to you, and then you walk out the door and there's this just vessel, this sort of like blank slate or this mirror that all he's doing is like reflecting what you want to see in yourself. It's a relief, you know?
I'm wondering, I want to talk about that scene at Mrs. Higgins' house between the two of you.
So this is what I love. He's like, the conservatory? And I'm like, yeah, your mom's house. He calls it the conservatory and I call it his mom's house.
That scene, so I saw the show on Thursday night again. I had seen the original cast and now I came back to see all these incredible people, which if you have seen it and you haven't seen them, you have to come back.
Absolutely.
And if you haven't seen it yet, well then you're in luck. And watching that scene ratchet up between the two of you, I mean, because you didn't really have so many rehearsals, has that just been something you've been finding together on stage? And what's the energy and...
Well, yeah, we spoke about this yesterday. It's at the end of a very long show. I know I have half an hour. I have a little break while Danny's doing his thing. And I then got to follow that personally with exactly half an hour of screaming, which is really hard. But it has to go like the clappers. We have to be there, and we have to really care about the stakes, and that's tough. And that's where the damage is done to one's voice, and that journey is part of our learning process as well. But it's tough, and these are two people that kind of miss each other a bit, are miscommunicating, and Higgins desperately wants to understand what's going on and wants to communicate with her, but everything he says comes out wrong. And
Right, because, this is the point in the show when she's now learned how to speak and she succeeds, and they've taken all the credit, and she says bye-bye. And then he is left with a hole, both in his home and sort of in his life that's been for the past few months. So he's desperately trying to figure out.
And then that has to lead to the Grown Accustomed, my final number, which has to take the energy of that scene into that song.
Laura, what is it for you coming up against, continuing to make your case and coming up against the force and, fighting with someone on stage?
Yeah. It's, I think, the most challenging part of the play. For me, I have done this pretty marvelous thing and have taken on this tremendous task, and these two are just mansplaining about how wonderful they are. And, I think, honestly, all women have been there at some point, right? Where you feel like, I'm also here. And so, you know, he's choking, he's dying. So, you know, we have that altercation, you know, once everyone goes to sleep, where I realize, like, or I feel, I should say, I feel as if I'm just going to be, it's done. Like, I've done the thing, I've won your bet, and now I'm just going to be thrust back into the world, but with absolutely no skills. So actually now I'm too posh to sell flowers in a flower shop, which is what I wanted. The only thing left for me is to marry, which is its own form of prostitution, really, you know, and I don't want to give, you know, anything away.
In early 1900s, what I'm
Well,
saying.
yeah, but also now. I'm kidding.
Yeah, that was coming.
Sort of. But, you know, he says, like, you can marry some nice guy, essentially, is one of the options that's given to me. And
She challenges him
yes.
with complete sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for the first time makes him question his own beliefs and his upbringing.
Right.
And
And
everything
that's why
he's been taught, and that's where the heat comes from, is, I don't know what this is.
And so for me, when that scene ends with him slamming a door and me being alone with a ring that he has thrown into a couch, you know, I then have the option of, okay, I'm going to try to go back to where I'm from. No one recognizes me. Then it gets so dire that I go to my dad, who's never helped me in my whole life. And even he is like, you're fine. So then what's left to me? Freddie. No, thank you. So then I actually end up going to his mother's home, who the audience doesn't get the benefit of seeing the relationship that we have developed, but, you know, she speaks of it, that she's grown very fond of Eliza. And, you know, so I have nowhere else to go. That is where I am. And then he comes in his floppy coat. And, you know, and then we try, and I think it's two people who are genuinely trying to understand each other, who are just simply not able to properly communicate.
And that's why the new staging of the end of the show is really so brilliant.
Yes.
I won't give anything away. As we are about to close out, I just would love for each of you to share super quickly a satisfying moment for you, whether it was on stage, backstage watching someone at a stage door of the My Fair Lady experience, and that once it's done, which it's not, but once it's done, you will take with you.
There are too many really, but one of the main ones for me, or perhaps the main one, was the Zitz probe, which is the first time we're in the rehearsal room with the orchestra. And after 6 weeks, or 5 weeks, or 4.5 weeks actually, it wasn't very long, of rehearsal, suddenly we're there with the orchestra, and everybody was like crying. And it's decimating. It's so beautiful and so moving and so powerful, and you suddenly realise that you're about to go out of the rehearsal room onto the main stage with this 28-piece orchestra. And I don't know, that for me was probably one of the big moments that I will always remember from this. Yeah.
Well, my favourite moment of the evening is honestly being backstage and watching Laura do A Good Dance All Night and Danny do Get It to the Church on the monitor. And just like with a stupid grin on my face, going, I wish I could do that instead of talk sing.
You sing.
Danny,
So
what about
fun.
you? Your time with it has been short,
It's
but
been short, but my favorite moment so far was after my first performance and coming off stage after Get Me to the Church, and the love of the ensemble patting me on the back and cheering me on. That meant a lot to me.
and Laura.